weekly class on the, here we go. Welcome to our weekly class on the teachings, the holy teachings of the Baal Shemtov. And this week, the Baal Shemtov actually has a teaching on the actual Parsha. And so therefore, I'm going to share that with you. And here we go. It's about the beginning of this week's Parsha. It's about the beginning of this week's Parsha. And it's in response to when Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses, after having been sent by Hashem, was given the unfortunate news from Paro that not only will he not let the Jewish people free, but that he would, in addition to the work that they were doing already, he would make the burden even more difficult. So Moshe Rabbeinu in the end of last week's Torah portion says to Hashem, why did you send me? From the time that I went to go and to share with these, to do your mission, things only got worse. So the beginning of this week's Torah portion is Hashem said to Moshe, in response to the complaint that Moshe had to Hashem, he said, I have made myself aware to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, with the name of Shin Daled Yud. Shin Daled Yud name, just a little bit of background. Every name of Hashem has a different particular way in which the divine energy is manifesting. And there's a reason why on the mezuzah, if you see on the mezuzah, there's a Shin Daled Yud, here you go, behind every mezuzah. Okay, what happened to that? I don't know. Anyway, that's funny. There you go. See it right there. So the Shin Daled Yud is particular on the mezuzah because the mezuzah is the way in which we bring about the connection between above and below in our physical dwelling, in our physical homes. So when we take that into consideration, it makes sense that the name that's on the mezuzah is that particular name. Why? Because that name, our sages tell us, is the name that represents the lowest level of divine manifestation. And what that means is the following. There are two concurrent truths that are happening that are elaborated on in great detail in the Hasidic teachings. The first idea is that there is no thought that can grasp Hashem at all, and there is no space that's free of Hashem at all. And that truth is not something that we could know with our minds because there's no thought that can grasp Hashem at all. But it's an idea that when we consider the limitations in which we occur, we could acknowledge that truth beyond the intelligent limitations or the usual ones in regards to how our mind operates. Our mind gets us there, but it can never capture its truth. So that's one force that's happening all the time. And then there's an order from the infinite light in the way that it originates, I'm going to correct that one for my friend who corrected me, originates in a higher level, in a more sublime level, in a platform in which no distinction can be noticed between the creator and the creation. That's the origin of it. But the way that the divine force manifests and metamorphoses in the conscious level, so to speak, from that idea to one where the way that we exist, that we take our existence in a way where it's not true. We take our existence with the assumptions that are embedded within the nature of our minds, just like every animal and every creature is wired a particular way. So the reason why we have to work and we have to go through a process in which we discover the divine within our reality, and this is because of the continuous symptom, the continuous contraction of the divine light, which occurs through the different names of Hashem. And the different names of Hashem, each one therefore represents a different way in which how that divine light manifests. So for example, the first 6 days of creation, the name Elokim is more commonly used, or not more common, it's the only name that's used. And that's because the name Elokim is the name that we learn from the teachings of Kabbalah, and it's very much elaborated on in the teachings of Hasidism, Chabad Hasidus specifically, that the name Elokim is the same numerical value as the nature. In other words, the fact that there's something called the nature of things, even though the nature is not the true form in which it exists, it's just the way in which it occurs. And the reason why we experience things in that way, with us being able to look at nature as if it has an entity of its own, is because of the fact that there's a particular filter of the divine force, the infinite, which is called with the name Elokim, and that particular name therefore conceals from us the true nature of all energy. That's the short end of it. I do highly suggest that you take the time to learn more about this, and you could go to jewishmalibu.com/Parsha, Parsha, and then go to the beginning of the Kahot Chumash, and there's more details about this idea that you can learn about. Okay, let's get back to our conversation. So what exactly was Hashem telling Moshe in response? Moshe is complaining about the fact that God has given him a mission and things have gone sour. And Hashem is saying, well, I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but I never revealed to them my higher names. I only revealed to them that name of Shin Daled Yud. So how's that answering Moshe's question? And just in short, when we have a challenge, the way we experience the challenge is at first from our perspective of what's going on. We put we look at what we think is a cause, we look at what we think is what's the reasonings behind it, whatever is taking place. But if we were to be in touch with the higher names of Hashem, then we wouldn't see things as we see them. We'd see them from the purpose in why they're here, which would immediately get us past the challenge and would immediately take us into the solution. But that's something that is a gift when that's revealed. The way that God created the world is that information is hidden from us. So how do we respond to that? For example, what just happened to Moses and the Jewish people. So Hashem is actually saying to Moses, I never revealed to Abraham either, or Isaac either, or Yaakov either. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, I never revealed to them that level that you're asking for. They submitted. You take a look at Abraham. God promised him all these great promises, and look what he suffered through, the challenges that he went through. And the same is true with Yitzchak, and the same is true with Yaakov. But yet they were steadfast with their faith and their trust. And I never had to reveal to them the story behind the story. Just think of it this way. That's exactly what it is. It's a story behind the story. So when you know the story behind the story, then you have an easier time dealing with whatever the story is, because you know the story. You get to the root of it. Okay. So let's go straight to the words of the Baal Shemtov. This is from the Kesser Shemtov, and it's the Kuf, the number 100. If it's not translated yet, you'll know number 100 when it is translated. Okay, here we go. So understand the following. There's a reason why we say in the prayers of the morning, afternoon, and evening, when we bless Hashem, there's a reason why we say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the reason why is because each one of them manifested a different way in how to serve Hashem, the perfection of which was Jacob. we talked about this in the past. Avraham was the perfection of the attribute on the right side, which is the attribute of chesed, which was demonstrated in his unconditional love to Hashem. Yitzchak was the personification of Gevura, the left side, which was demonstrated in his total awe to Hashem. And Yaakov was the representation of the center, which is the balance between the right and left, which was demonstrated in the way that he served Hashem in its total perfection. And as such, since we're their descendants, embedded within us are these ingredients in our subconscious or in our soul. And each one of these have a particular way in which they are done to perfection. There's a way in which the Avram part of us could always be worked on and to be done better. That's the way that we demonstrate our love to Hashem. Or the same is also true the way we demonstrate our awe of Hashem. And the same is also true in the way we demonstrate the beauty, which is the balance between the two. Usually speaking, the love aspect of our relationship is what drives us to be proactive, to do mitzvot. And the awe aspect of our relationship is what refrains us from doing things that we shouldn't. All right. So now the way that it works is that when there is joy in the world, that is connected to the attribute of Avraham, because Avraham is chesed. And since in every creature in the world there is a spark of godliness, therefore everything can be rooted back to one of these three channels of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the purpose of our relationship with whatever it is to always elevate whatever spark it is and to reconnect it to its source. And by us being more present to which channel is operating at the time, then we could be more present to how to respond to it. So we could therefore not be reactive, but we could be proactive about our response. And this is what Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu. And I showed myself to Avraham and to Yitzchak and to Yaakov with the name of Shin Daled Yud. As I shared with you a moment ago, the name Shin Daled Yud is the words that are the acronym for the name that denotes the lowest level of manifestation of the divine concealment. As our sages say, the acronym for it is Sha'amar La'olam Dai, that he told to his world, enough. In other words, if that were not to occur, then the forces of darkness would even be more powerful. But there was a certain stop, an end to how far the forces can go, because that's the way God created the world, as I shared with you, is a continuous concealment. But if there was no stop at it, then God forbid the dark side would be too overpowering, and we would have no possibility of transforming it when it's within us. So that's the point, is that if not for the fact that that was done, that was the divine command to that level of darkness, that there's a certain depth to which it could go and no further. I mean, that's pretty deep the way that it is, don't get me wrong, but can imagine how much worse it could have been. Then we would have had no possibility of doing the work that we're here to do, which is to transform the darkness within us into light. And therefore, that's the way that we're meant to respond to things when they come to us, is to look at the event as a manifestation, when it's of the lowest form in which the divine manifests itself. So that's being present to the Shin Daled Yud name. In other words, that name reminds us that the whole darkness, number one, is coming from the same source, but it has a purpose, it serves a purpose. I understand this opens up a whole bunch of questions, and that's something that one could learn more about and to get into deeper conversation. But this is what Hashem is saying, that I showed myself to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, which is, I let them know about this aspect, about how the three channels come to the lower level of reality in the name of Shin Daled Yud. And because of the fact that they were operating from that level, and they responded to that level, and they began to do the work that we're all here to complete. So what happens is that the Jewish people, through Moses, the prophet, actually get to experience the next name with the giving of the Torah. And that was the continuation. That is the continuation of this conversation that Hashem says to Moses. But also lets us know the greatness of the fact that Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, when they trusted, they were much more in the blind because of the fact that they were yet to be made aware of some of the internal spiritual science that takes place in the names of God and how they manifest. And that in itself gives us pause to think about the fact that imagine that even though they were unaware of the fact that there's the DP frequency today, meaning in the way that we've been made aware of after the giving of the Torah, obviously, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they all had great spiritual experiences that the Torah itself speaks about, but it doesn't talk about the years that they didn't have that, like the many years that Yaakov had no divine inspiration when Joseph was in Egypt. So that was a long time. So the point is that didn't stop him, even though he was in the dark, so to speak, and he was in tremendous pain. That didn't stop him from acknowledging the fact that everything is here for a purpose, and understanding that even those events in life that that they may not seem that way, but for the fact that they were able to nevertheless, with great trust and with great faith, respond accordingly, then they were able to bring within us the possibility to do the same. And that's what Hashem is telling Moshe, that we have it within us to be able to empower our minds and our beings to be aware of the fact that it's not the way we see it. And Hashem is always intimately involved in everything that's happening in our lives. On that note, I want to wish you all a fantastic end of the week. And God willing, we'll see you next week.